You're about to save hours every single day by learning how to use AI the right way. I've uncovered 5 breakthrough techniques buried in research papers from Google, Stanford, and OpenAI, methods backed by over 30,000 academic citations that can transform ordinary prompts into productivity superpowers. These aren't just YouTube tricks, well, they might look like it, but they're actually scientifically proven techniques that will significantly improve your efficiency in email writing, content creation, code generation, even problem solving. And the best part? These techniques work in any free AI tool, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, and more. Let's dive in. Our first method is based on the research language models are few-shot learners. This is quite a large scientific paper with a tremendous number of pages, 75, and lots of data, research, meta-analysis, and everything else. We obviously won't dive into all of this, and let's quickly move on to how this method actually works. Actually, it's very simple. Let's say we have an extremely simple task. Write 3 subject lines for a cold email about a SaaS productivity tool, and we get a fairly generic result. But now we can easily improve it using this method. To do this, we enter the following. Write compelling cold email subject lines that get 40% plus open rates. Here we provide examples of how a subject line can look for different products, and at the end we ask ChatGPT or any other neural network to provide its versions based on the examples we've shown. Here we can see the difference between our prompts. Obviously, the result on the left, where we provided examples, looks significantly better. Nevertheless, naturally, its quality is subjective and heavily depends exactly on the examples you provide to ChatGPT. Nevertheless, it's a very simple technique that is extremely effective. So, our next method is based on the research chain of thought prompting elicits reasoning in large language models. This paper is also quite interesting, and there's a lot of different information here. But if we simplify everything, then to improve our final result, our prompt, it's simply enough to add one simple phrase, think out loud, or let's think step by step, and that's it. One such phrase improves results by 8.4%. At the same time, when it comes to arithmetic problems, the result improves by a whole 8 times. Of course, this research was conducted on the more outdated GPT-3 model. Nevertheless, it's also effective in relation to newer models, because fundamentally, little has changed, and we can see this now with our own eyes. Let's open ChatGPT and ask for an extremely simple task. Let's say we need to evaluate an idea for a meal planning startup. We get a fairly basic answer, which will depend strictly on what system prompt the particular LLM model has. In the case of, say, ChatGPT, the answer is quite good, but at the same time it may not fit our specific requirements. It will be significantly more effective to specify a direct chain of reasoning step by step. Let's say we specify such a method on the right, and here we specify let's think step by step, and all the necessary logic by which it should reason. Of course, the logic will be different for everyone. And, of course, the result will be more controlled by you specifically, because you're more precisely specifying the outcome. Due to this, the effectiveness of the prompt will be higher. What's interesting is, as you can see, ChatGPT even chose a different mode for generating the result. And here we can see that our result is significantly more complete, because it follows our plan. Moreover, it's based on sources, as you can see here, and in each of the points sources are provided, which is very important when it comes to research. Therefore, you can boldly take this method into your arsenal and use it going forward. The next method is incredibly interesting. Its principle is quite simple. It consists of generating several different solutions and choosing the most common appropriate answer. Thus, the average effectiveness increases by 18%, which is quite a lot. The paper itself was extremely popular and had more than 3,000 citations, which is very impressive. But again, no one will dig into these meta-studies. And let's immediately move on directly to ChatGPT and see with our own eyes if this method is that good. Let's use some simple task. How to improve the conversion of a landing page from 2 to 5%. And here we get a result with different solution options to the presented problem. On the right, we'll specify a different prompt. Propose a strategy for increasing conversion. And at the same time provide 5 different approaches based on different points of view. And in this example, we chose 5 of them. And for each approach, give specific actions. Then identify the most common recommendations across all approaches. The prompt sounds quite interesting. Let's see what we get. For example, right in the first suggestion, we see an idea related to FOMO, while in our basic prompt there's no FOMO idea, although of course it's fairly generic. Besides, there are other approaches here which also sound quite interesting. But at the same time, we have a suggestion regarding optimization of the site for mobile first, and many different approaches, including even a copywriting approach, which is quite interesting. And again, I'll repeat that we can generate the approaches themselves again in ChatGPT itself, so that it provides us with different points of view. and we can create such a meta prompt that will encompass different approaches, and will get results in a more complete form. And what's most interesting, in the end we got the so-called common recommendations across approaches. And here we can look at the result they provided us. It's important to understand that certain techniques may already be built into the system prompt of the model you're using. Or maybe they're not built in. Therefore, to truly effectively use such systems as ChatGPT, we need to know about the existence of such an approach, which is very, very important. The next method is very important if you're not good with math and perform calculations in ChatGPT. The method is called Program-Aided Language Models. It may actually seem somewhat outdated because its idea is extremely simple. Ask ChatGPT or any other LLM to use Python for generating answer results. Many models do this on their own, but not always. As a rule, this happens automatically, and I wouldn't rely on LLM results without provided code. Therefore, it's very important to regularly write about having this or that model use Python to generate results. Let's check our ChatGPT what result we can get. By the way, the paper was extremely popular, though it has over 1,000 citations. So, we specify an extremely simple prompt. We calculate how much money we'll get if we invest a certain amount for several years. And let's apply the so-called PAL approach, but from a different angle. The same thing, but let's ask to do it in Python. I really hope we get the same results. That way, trust in ChatGPT will increase somewhat. But nevertheless, I categorically recommend regularly checking calculations, and doing this through Python because ChatGPT can make mistakes, just like any other LLM model. So, on the left we got results, and total wealth amounts to 263,000. And let's see what we get in Python. As you can see, it takes somewhat longer to load, and this takes more time. So, we got our result, and strangely enough, it corresponds to what we got on the left, but it's somewhat different. As you can see, here the values are somewhat different, but nevertheless very close. Therefore, again I'll repeat, as we can see, it's better to do this through Python. The numbers are similar, close, but if we're talking about something serious, you need to double check. This paper wasn't so popular, only 4 citations, and perhaps it's because it's quite new compared to the others. Nevertheless, the method is extremely simple and very useful, especially if you don't have a lot of experience in prompting. What is the essence of this method? It's quite simple. You need to comprehensively describe what you want from your ChatGPT or any other LLM. You set the task, set the context of this task, its constraints, the format you want to receive in the end, and the success criteria. Very, very simple. Nevertheless, this kind of approach increases the effectiveness of the final result by 20%, which is very, very good. Let's say we have the task of creating a marketing strategy. We use an extremely simple prompt. Create a content strategy for my B2B product. Nothing comprehensive and extremely generic. Of course, we can get a correspondingly vague answer. At the same time, we can structure it more precisely if we use the aforementioned technique. Same thing. Create a 90-day strategy. But we set the context, we set our constraints and output format, and of course success criteria, and here we'll get a significantly more detailed result. Why? Simply because we provided more information to ChatGPT itself. Thus, you increase the effectiveness of your answer based on research, and the research conducted more than 1,000 different tests. Effectiveness increases by 38%, which is very, very significant. Well, in conclusion, I'd like to say what's necessary for writing a successful prompt. As a rule, the main thing is to describe the task more comprehensively. Imagine that you're not talking to AI, but you're talking to a person, and a person who, as a rule, is not very smart and doesn't understand things very well. Or rather, they can be very smart but not very understanding. Therefore, you must provide them with all the necessary information so that this person grasps the situation and can find the right solutions based on the available information. Exactly the same thing you typically do with a person. For example, we can see in our specific example that the result on the left is one thing. At the same time, the result on the right is different. And you can see to what degree the result on the right is more structured. It's formulated exactly from the tasks that we set for it, and this is very, very good.